Hi, I'm Sam Thurgood and welcome to my 5-minute parasha. In this week's Sidra of Bechukotai, Hashem speaks to us about the positive consequences of following the Torah and keeping the mitzvot and the negative consequences of turning away from the Torah. But there seems to be quite a lot of repetition in both sides of the equation. Both within the positive side, Hashem seems to be saying the same thing a few times, and the negative as well. I'll give you an example. Im Bechukotai telech, if you will walk in my statutes. What does it mean to walk in the statutes? Presumably that means to keep the mitzvot. Vet mitzvotai tishmoru, and you will keep my mitzvot. Okay, that means to keep the mitzvot. V'asitem otam, and you will do them. Then that means to do the mitzvot. So the question obviously is, what three separate components is Hashem referring to here when it comes to our observance of mitzvot? And Rashi says very clearly and immediately that the keeping of the mitzvot really should be the end product of the process and is not necessarily even the primary component. He says, you know what Bechukotai telechu means? What does it mean to walk in Hashem's ways? Shetiyu amelim b'Torah. That you must toil, you must labor in Torah. And this was something that Rosh Yeshiva of blessed memory, Rabbi Israel Goldfein, used to emphasize all the time. It's not enough that you should study Torah, and it's not enough that you should know Torah, and it's not enough that you should practice Torah. What you need is amelut, you need toil, labor, effort in the study of Torah. I've started a fascinating book. It's called How to Read a Book. I haven't gotten very far because it's hard to read it without having read it. But the point that he makes right in the beginning is that he says there are different kinds of reading, or more accurately, different levels of reading. Yeah, he says there's reading for entertainment, but then there's reading for information, where you're just trying to understand the content of it. But a higher level of reading is reading for understanding. And he says, first you have to understand there's no such thing as passive reading. Reading is an intensely active exercise. And the more that you're reading for understanding, the more active and the more exhausting it is. If you're just reading because I want to see what it says and process it, okay, so you're going through it on a certain level. But if I really want to deeply understand it, and he says there's an even higher level called synthetic reading, where I'm reading to understand what's going on in this book and compare it to what's going on in other books and construct an overarching picture of what's happening with all of them, that, he says, requires a great deal of personal effort and involvement. And really what he's trying to say is of amelut. What Hashem's saying to us in this mitzvah is, I don't want you to read the Torah and you say, oh, okay, let me make a list of everything that's it. Let me learn it all off by heart. Okay, good, I've got it. I've absorbed that information. No, it's not just about absorbing the information. I want you to understand that information. I want you to process it. I want you to think about it, ponder it, engage with it, work with it. If you are learning with that kind of activeness, from there will come a healthy and appropriate observance of mitzvot. But keeping the mitzvot as some kind of magic formula, as some kind of ritualistic tradition, is not what Hashem's looking for, and that is not the end result of Bechukotai telechu, of walking in the ways of Hashem. And so Hashem is promising us here the most wonderful, fabulous blessings in every aspect of our lives. But it's predicated upon this kind of active, proactive mental engagement. It's so much easier not to put in the effort. It's so much easier, even when we want to study, to listen to somebody else, to read more passively, to read for information. It's more difficult to really get yourself into that kind of active learning that we're speaking about. But that's where the true benefit comes from. That's where understanding comes from. That's where depth comes from. And that's where it actually becomes a part of you. A friend of mine, Aaron Ziegler, once sold me a book. And we discussed it. He said, what a wonderful book. And I said to him, now I just need to get the information from the book into my head. And he said, no. Rabbi Gifter said you need to get that Torah from that book into your bones. And I think that's exactly the distinction we're talking about here. If you're reading for information, you're just doing a transfer of knowledge into your head. But if you want this to become a part of you, that requires a more active learning, a more active discussion, understanding, talking it through with yourself or with somebody else, asking questions, giving answers. Amelut b'Torah. Have a wonderful Shabbat.